Oppenheimer. From 1979 he moved into medical research and teaching, with positions at the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, Oxford University, a research center in Kilifi, Kenya, and the Malaysian University Sains in Penang. He spent 3 years conducting research in Papua New Guinea, studying the effects of iron supplementation on susceptibility to infection. His results, published in the late 1980s, identified the role of genetic mutations in malaria territory as a result of natural selection due to their protective effect against malaria, and that different genotypes for alpha thalassemia traced different migrations to the Pacific. Following that work, he concentrated on researching the use of unique genetic mutations as markers of ancient migration. From 1990–1994 Oppenheimer served as chairman and head of clinical services in the Department of Pediatrics at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He worked as a senior specialist pediatrician in Brunei from 1994 to 1996. He returned to England in 1997, writing the book Eden in the East. The Sinking Continent is Southeast Asia, which was published in 1998. Books synthesized work in a variety of scientific disciplines, including oceanography, archaeology, linguistics, social anthropology, and human genetics. He continued to write books and articles, and began a second career as a popular prehistoric human researcher and scientific writer. He worked as a consultant on 2 television documentary series, The Real Eve Discovery Channel, and Out of Eden, Channel 4, and published a second book, Out of Eden, People of the World, titled The Real Eve in the USA. This was followed in 2006 by The Origins of the British, a genetic detective story, on the placement of the post-glacial population of Great Britain and Ireland. In 2009 he was a consultant on the BBC TV series The Incredible Human Journey. Book by Oppenheimer. Eden in the East. 1999. Phoenix, Orion, ISBN 0-7538-0679-7. From Eden. 2004. Constable and Robinson ISBN 1-84119-894-3 UK. Title The Real Eve. The Real Eve. Carroll and Graff. The 9th of September 2004 ISBN 0-7867-1334-8 US. Title From Out of Eden. The Origins of the British. A Genetic. 2006. Constable and Robinson. ISBN 1-84529-158-1. Paperback 2007. Constable and Robinson. ISBN 978-184529-482-3. Eden in the East. In his book Eden in the East, A Submerged Continent in Southeast Asia, published in 1998, Oppenheimer made the study of rising sea levels accompanied by waning ice ages as much as 500 feet, 150 meters, during the period 14,000 to 7,000 years ago, must be taken into account when trying to understand gene flow and culture in Eurasia. Citing evidence from geology, archaeology, genetics, linguistics, and folklore, the hypothesis suggests that the Southeast Asian continent of Sundaland was home to a rich and indigenous culture that spread when the Sundaland was largely submerged and its inhabitants moved westward. According to Oppenheimer, Sundaland culture may have reached India and Mesopotamia, becoming roots for the innovative culture that developed in these regions. He also suggested that the Austronesian language originated from Sundaland and that a Neolithic revolution may have started. The Real Eve, U.S. documentary and book title, Out of Eden, UK book title. Main article. The Real Eve. In 2002, Oppenheimer worked as a consultant on the television documentary series, The Real Eve, produced by the American cable network Discovery Channel and directed by Andrew Piddington. This series is known as Where We Come From in the UK. The Eve in the title refers to the mitochondria of Eve, the name used for the most recent common ancestor of all human beings in the matrilineal, mother-to-daughter, lineage. Following his series, Oppenheimer published a book on the same theme, originally titled Out of Eden in the UK and published as The Real Eve in the US. This work, published in 2004, focuses on Oppenheimer's hypothesis that modern humans emerged from East Africa in a single large exodus of no more than a few hundred individuals. This group is nomad. Oppenheimer states that they are the ancestors of all non-African races based on grouping into a number of physical characteristics, language, ethnicity and culture as seen today. In his 2006 book The Origins of the British, revised 2007, Oppenheimer argues that either the Anglo-Saxons or the Celts have had a lot of impact on the genetics of the British Isles population, and that British ancestry is mainly traced to Paleolithic Iberians, now represented best with the Basque people, as a replacement. He also argues that his descent includes the race that exists in Scandinavia. He published an introduction to his book in Prospect magazine and answered several critiques in more Prospect magazine articles in June 2007. James Burnett, Monboddo, Early Philosophers for Formulating the One-Source Theory of Jared Diamond, Robert A. Foley, Tumas Kivisild, Luigi Luca Cavalli, Sforza, Chris Stringer, Brian Sykes, Rosser Z., and others, 2000. Y Chromosome Diversity in Europe. American Journal of Human Genetics 67, 1526. Foster P. and Toth A., 2003. Towards the Kinship Chronology of Ancient Gaul, Celts and Indo-Europe. Proc of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States 100, 9079. Forster P., Polzin T. and Roll A., 2006. Evolution of Basic English Vocabulary in Germanic Language Networks, in Forster and Renfrew, eds. Kinship Methods and Prehistoric Language, McDonald Institute. Atlantis is Indonesia. Archaeological evidence shows that Neolithic culture began around 5,000 years ago in the archipelago. Anthropological evidence shows that humans with Mongoloid physical characteristics also appeared. This Mongoloid population has existed in the archipelago around 5,000 to 3,000 years ago with Austronesian languages and agricultural technology. The results of the study found the theory that modern humans developed in several parts of the world separately, multi-origin. Therefore, early humans whose fossils were found at various sites in Java, Homo erectus, Homo solonensis, Mojocertensis, and in China, Peking man, are considered to be the oldest and earliest human fossils on Earth. The National Archaeology Center has successfully examined skeletons 2,000, 3,000 years old, namely ancient DNA research from the Plawangan sites in central Java and Gilimanuk, Bali. The research shows that Indonesian humans who live in the two sites have been genetically related since 2,000, 3,000 years ago. In fact, until now the Balinese and Javanese human populations still have a close genetic relationship to this day. In the archipelago there are 50 ethnic Mongoloid populations who inhabit it. Their culture and language belong to one language family or phylum, namely the Austronesian languages, which indicate they came from a common ancestor. Nusantara is the term for an archipelagic country located in the Indonesian archipelago today. Chinese records have named these islands Nan Hai, which means the South Sea Islands. Ancient records of the Indians named it Dwaipantara, which means the land of Seberang Islands, which is derived from the Sanskrit word Dwaipa, island, and between, outer, opposite, and is also called Swarnadwaipa, Golden Island, namely Sumatra today. The Arabs called this area Jazir al-Jawi, Java Islands. The archipelago currently has at least 50 ethnic populations living in it, with its own cultural and linguistic characteristics. Most of this population with Mongoloid physical characteristics have languages that belong to one language family or phylum. Their languages are Austronesian languages, which indicate they come from a common ancestor. Meanwhile, in eastern Indonesia there is a population whose languages belong to various Papuan languages. From the two theories about the origin of humans who inhabited the archipelago, the Sundanese land continent is the common thread. The approach of philological, anthropological and archaeological analysis of the kingdoms of the ancient archipelago, as well as the analysis of their interrelationships with each other, will most likely reveal the darkness of the archipelago's past. Harry Truman Theory. This theory says that the ancestors of the Austronesian people came from the Sundanese land plains, which sank during the Ice Age Pleistocene era. This population had an advanced civilization. They migrated to mainland Asia to Mesopotamia, influenced the local population and developed civilization. This opinion was reinforced by Umar Anggarajeni, saying that Austronesian as a language family is a major phenomenon in human history. This family has the most extensive distribution, covering more than 1,200 languages spread from Madagascar in the west to Easter Island in the east. The language is now spoken by more than 300 million people. The opinion of Umar Anggarajeni and Harry Truman about the distribution and influence of the Austronesian language and nation was also confirmed by Abdul Hadi W.M. The concept of Atlantis attracted the attention of Nazi theorists. In 1938, Heinrich Himmler organized a search in Tibet to find the remains of the White Atlanteans. According to Julius Evola, Revolt Against the Modern World, 1934, the Atlanteans were Hyperborean Nordic superhuman, Ubermensch, who came from the North Pole, see Thule. Alfred Rosenberg, The Myth of the 20th Century, 1930 also describes the Nordic Atlantean, or Aryan Nordic, race. Arya has become associated with the racial hierarchy that considers white, blonde, blue-eyed people more superior to other skin nations, and it serves as a propaganda tool that is powerful in the historical reality that has occurred, however it is not factual. To this day, the word Arya is loaded with all kinds of negative connotations and is largely due to the Nazi ideology, which claims to be Arya nation. Misguided and Nazi propaganda has damaged Aryans' image, eliminating thousands of people with just one word, racism. We have entered and fallen into the abyss of destruction due to the political policies of a nation. To the point of assumption against white supremacy as superior nation. Then it wildly makes the attitude of contagious other nations to label the human hierarchy based on skin color, white or black. This has the effect of dividing mankind. Then who is Aryan? The initial presumption of the Aryan people published today is that those who lived in Iran and Iraq in the prehistoric era. These people migrated to northern India around 1500 BC. These indigenous, Dravidian, India called the newcomers, Arya. In the late 19th century, early 20th century, Aryan was equated with German or Nordic people, and prior to this the presumption, Aryan, refers to an ancient language whose speakers are thought to have spread and influenced languages throughout the Indian subcontinent. Also published is the Sumerian civilization developing in the Persian Gulf, around 4 to 3000 BC, and the civilization in the plains of Shinar land is a new area after 2000 BC which is now called Babylon. Other sources also spread that, according to Volkish people's belief, the Aryans had created a high civilization, which existed thousands of years ago, were destroyed by natural disasters of ice melting at the end of the last ice age or the beginning of the ice age, 12,000 years ago, and the basis for this mythology is less solid. Another assumption is that the original land of the Aryans was the Thule, at the northern end of the earth, a warm region. They lived in caves. This branch of the Aryan race was the Proto-Indo-European, published was the Iranian, who spread, colonized various northern regions of the earth in the post-flood period, spread agricultural civilization, and is universally recognized by the symbol, swastika. This symbol was used by Nazi ideology to claim to be the Aryan nation. This misconception and Nazi propaganda has damaged Aryans' image. Eliminating humans only on the basis of racism is recognized by using the symbol, swastika, in the Hitler era. The basic questions that must be answered. What nation in the world can explain the complete, clear and detailed philosophical meaning of the symbol, swastika? What nation in the world until today in its daily culture uses the symbol, swastika? The nation, which until today with its swastika philosophy lives in peace and reconciles the world, because here are perfectly stored the main basic teachings of the original, Dharmic, that underlie the growth of teachings in India. The origins of religion in India began with the entry of the Aryan Kakya, Saka nation, which brought enormous changes in the life order of Indian society from 3102 BC to 1300 BC. That the Aryans were not the first inhabitants of India, and the Harappan, Dravidian, civilization existed long before their arrival. This means that the Aryan or Vedic culture was not the sole source of early civilization in India, that the source came from elsewhere. This change occurred because the Aryans carried out cultural integration with the native Indian, Dravidian, and then this integration gave birth to three Indian religions: Hindu, Buddhist, and Jaina, the Aryan nation. After they began writing the Vedic scriptures, this holy book was written in 4 parts such as Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. Saka is recorded in the word Mahachakya of the Kakya, Kaka, Saka. The original teaching of the archipelago's ancestors, Dharma, appears in the literacy of the word Kusaladharmabhajana. Originated in Svarnadvipa long before Christ, depicted in Vwana Phala, now published as Borobudur. So, Saka is the name of a nation who came to India and expanded to migrate to Central Asia, Eastern Europe and North Anatolia in the aftermath of the Mahabharata War, 3162 BC, around 3100-3000 BC. Europeans call the Saka with Scythian, is what is meant by Aryan, the ancestors of the Indonesian nation who colored 3/4 of the earth's face as well as the land of India. The literacy of the word Arya is recorded in the opening sentence of the Kalasan inscription with the sentence Namo Bhagavatya Arya Tara Yai. The word Samgaya is written in the Nalanda Bihar area of India, on the site of a stupa called Saraputra. Iri Nalanda Mahaviharya Arya Bhiksusamgasya. Literacy of the word Saraputra. This is clearly the name Nusantara, not India. This Samgasya is also found in the 8th stanza sentence of the Kalasan inscription. Verse 8. Buradaksiniam Atula Data Samgaya Rajasimhana Sailendrarajabupar Anapara Palyar Santakya, Samgaya. Unmatched by Rajasimha of the Shailendra lineage and subsequent rulers alternating. Maharaja Panankarana, his sacred building honoring a 700-year-old teaching, Varsasada Saptabir. This means that the building, Kalasan, has also been known about Samgaya, which has been going on for 700 years. This knowledge is in addition to Veda, which is studied in Nalanda, India, including Veda, Samgaya, Atharvaveda, Hetuvidya logic, Chikitsavidya medicine, Shabdavidya. Grammar. Notice there is a Veda study, not Buddhism only. Aryan is the ancestor of the Indonesian archipelago. The former name, Saraputra, is the son of the archipelago, a pioneer figure for the birth of one of the Indian teachings which is now labeled in Borobudur. He was born from a mother named Sari, in Svarnabhumi, Svarnadvipa, Nusantara, Indonesia before the 5th century BC. Hirananda Shastri, in 1921, in the vestibule of the monastery No. 1 at Nalanda Bihar University, India, found artifacts in the form of copper plates, donation Balaputradeva, Raja Suvarnadvipa lineage of Sailendra. Nalanda copper palette, found at the I Nalanda Monastery in India, is inscribed with King Phala, a descendant of Sailendra, named Balaputradeva of Svarnadvipa. The meaning. Nalanda, in Bihar, India was founded in 427 AD and was built by and on the initiative of Sailendra Srivijaya from Sumatra, Indonesia. The Kakya, Scythian Kaka, Saka, Arya people, there is a stupa called Saraputra. This is evidence of our ancestors who colored India. The early theory of human civilization being in the Sunda Shelf, Sunda land, was also put forward by Professor Arios da Nunos Santos, 2005. Santos applies philological, linguistic, anthropological and archaeological analysis. The results of the analysis of the reflections of buildings and historical artifacts such as pyramids in Egypt, sacred temples from the Mayan and Aztec civilizations, the legacy of the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa civilizations, as well as geographic analysis such as area, climate, natural resources, volcanoes, and farming methods, shows that the rice terracing system that is unique to Indonesia is the form adopted by the Borobudur Temple, the pyramids in Egypt, and the ancient Aztec buildings in Mexico. After conducting research for 30 years, Santos concluded that Sunda land was the center of an advanced civilization. The early theory of human civilization being in the Sunda Shelf, Sunda land, was also put forward by Santos, 2005. Santos applies philological, linguistic, anthropological and archaeological analysis. The results of the analysis of the reflections of buildings and historical artifacts such as pyramids in Egypt, sacred temples from the Mayan and Aztec civilizations, the legacy of the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa civilizations, as well as geographic analysis such as area, climate, natural resources, volcanoes, and farming methods, shows that the rice terracing system that is unique to Indonesia is the form adopted by the Borobudur Temple, the pyramids in Egypt, and the ancient Aztec buildings in Mexico. After conducting research for 30 years, Santos concluded that the Sunda land was the center of an advanced civilization thousands of years ago known as the continent of Atlantis. In a book Atlantis, the lost continent finally found, the definitive localization of Plato's lost civilization, the work of a scientist from Brazil named Professor Ariso Nanos dos Santos, concluded that Atlantis was Indonesia. In his research for 30 years later, the results were written, including showing 33 comparisons, such as area, weather, natural resources, volcanoes, and farming methods. According to him, The shape of the pyramids in Egypt and ancient Aztec buildings in Mexico originated from the Sundanese land as reflected in Borobudur. Santos determined that in the past Atlantis was a continent stretching from the southern part of India, Sri Lanka, Sumatra, Java, Kalimantan, continuing eastward with Indonesia as its center. In that area, there are dozens of active volcanoes and are surrounded by a unified ocean called Oriental, consisting of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Santos argued that at the time of the eruption of various volcanoes, the ice sheet melted and flowed into the ocean so that its area increased. The water and mud from the volcanic ash burdens the oceans and their bottoms, causing tremendous pressure on the Earth's crust on the ocean floor, especially on the coasts of continents. This pressure resulted in an earthquake. This earthquake was strengthened again by mountains that erupted later in succession and caused a terrible tsunami wave. Santos named it Heinrich events. Between Plato and Santos agree. Namely, first, that the location of the submerged continent was Atlantis, and by Santos it was confirmed as the territory of the Republic of Indonesia. Second, the number or length of the volcanic chain in Indonesia. The oldest kingdom recorded on the island of Java based on archaeological evidence is the Salakanegara kingdom built in the 2nd century AD, which is located on Teluk Lada Beach, Pandeglang, Banten. It is strongly suspected that they immigrated from Sumatra. Actually, there has been an advanced civilization in the archipelago, but historians have never been tracked and recorded in its history. This is because Indonesian historians have agreed with Dutch historians. That is, the calculation of the beginning of the Saka year on the inscription must be calculated starting in 78 AD, so that the history of the ancestors of the Indonesian nation before 78 AD is lost. This is very detrimental. The result is, the oldest kingdom recorded in Sumatra is only the Jambi Malay kingdom, Chupo, namely Koing, 2nd century AD, Tupo, 3rd century AD, and Kuntala, Kantoli, 5th century AD. According to the story Tombo Adat of Lubuk Jambi, which was inherited from their ancestors, it is said that this is where the Lubuk people come from, therefore this area is called Lubuk Jambi. In Tombo it is also mentioned that in this area there is a Kandi's royal palace which has long been lost. The palace, called the Damna Palace, sits on a hilltop surrounded by a clear river. The search for royal relics has found locations, artifacts, and debris that are strongly suspected of being the relics of Kandi's, with location characteristics similar to Plato's 347 BC sketch of Atlantis. Kingdom of Salakanegara. The Kingdom of Salakanegara. Salaka means silver or Rajatapura. The source is listed in the Wangsakerta manuscript. This kingdom was built in 130 AD, which is located on the coast of Teluk Lada, Pandeglang Regency, Banten. The first king was Dewawarman, who had the title Prabu Dharmalokapala Dewawarman Haji Rakya Gapura Sagara, who ruled until 168 AD.